Hello and welcome to another episode of Don't Feed Look Up. We are so lucky to have Sam Coxe here today from Flaus. She is the CEO and founder. I've been following her LinkedIn and Twitter posts for quite some time, so super excited to have her on here today and actually get to talk to her. Without further ado, Sam, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself and tell us how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm super excited. Obviously, a big fan of the podcast as well. So, yeah, I'm Sam. I'm the CEO and founder of Flaus. Flaus is the world's first electric flosser, just like an electric toothbrush, but for flossing. My background and my journey of getting here, I'm sure we'll go into more details, but it was definitely a winding path. I am from Southern California and I went to USC for undergrad and I ended up going straight through to law school. I got my JD from NYU Law and then came back to LA and I practiced mergers and acquisitions at a massive law firm called Skadden for about 4 years. And it was during my time at Skadden that I had a dentist appointment. And at the time, I was an amazing twice a day toothbrusher with my electric toothbrush, but a horrible flosser. So about a week leading up to this dentist appointment, I started vigorously flossing so that when I got in the dentist chair and she asked, have you been flossing? My answer was yes. And right away, she knew I was a liar, left with like 12 cavities. It was mortifying how many cavities I left with. And I came home and I thought to myself, I hate flossing. I love using my electric toothbrush. Why don't I just go buy an electric flosser that could do it for me? I actually went online to go purchase one and was shocked to discover nothing like this existed. I could not believe it. And that was really my like first light bulb moment. And over the course of the following weeks, I started talking to my friends and colleagues at the firm. And that's when I realized everyone hates flossing and we all hate flossing for the same reasons. So that was really my aha moment. And I ended up leaving being a lawyer in 2021, launching a super successful Indiegogo campaign, raising a lot of money, and then launching Flaus into market. And we have just been off to the races ever since.
Amazing. Yeah, congrats on all
Thank
the
you.
success as well. I think we can all relate to the horrifying dentist story as well. I've
Unfortunately,
definitely
so.
been there. Yeah. Um, quick question for you, Sam. So obviously coming from a law background, you're probably pretty risk averse. How did you kind of think about launching the company and, personally also looking at launching a CPG brand, there's so much, that you have to invest in inventory and go to market. And so how did you kind of think about that? And just curious to hear about your learnings.
Yeah, great question. So, even I would say more difficult than just a CPG brand, it's doing consumer electronic hardware. That is a beast in and of itself. And so, I would say one of the benefits I had, and probably hopefully some of your listeners would have if they go and decide to make this career pivot, is you are so naive as a first time founder. You really don't know all the obstacles you're going to face. So you just keep going. And I think that naivete has been such a benefit for me because I have so much perseverance and resiliency that I just keep going. And I think had I known how difficult consumer electronic hardware was going to be, I probably would have hesitated a bit more to jumping to that. Um, but before even launching Flaus, when I first came up with the idea, I probably spent, hundreds of hours, if not up to 1,000 hours of just doing diligence into the space, into the area, into the current product offerings. Why doesn't this product already exist? It seems so obvious. I couldn't believe it. And so trying to like cold message people on LinkedIn to find out people who have worked at Oral B previously and trying to figure out like, what is this space and what is the appetite from consumers for a product like this? And I started getting more and more green lights on my journey. And I decided this was about 6 months after I came up with the idea. I thought, before I invest any material amount of my own savings and dollars into this, I'm going to launch a survey monkey and just see what the results are. I'm going to see if people would even want to buy a product like this. And I'm not going to bias them. I'm just going to put it out there. And so I did this 15-question survey, all the way from understanding like how often are they even flossing now? What's the pain points? What are they using? And then a two to three sentences about what the idea of Flaus was and would you buy this? And then some pricing questions. And I launched that survey and I got about 600, I think, and 40 responses within like a 24-hour period. So it's really fast. And it was so overwhelmingly positive. There only 30% of our respondents were even flossing regularly, which is, it just validated all the publicly available stats on the issues with oral care. Only 30% of Americans floss daily. A whole nother 32% never floss at all, ever. And so that was validated in my results. And then the desire for a product like this was, it was so overwhelmingly positive that that was my first, like, okay, I'm now going to start putting money into this. So I went on Google and found an engineer. My neighbor at the time was a dentist. I went and I basically looked, I was like, okay, I am a lawyer with no medical background, no engineering background. Who do I need to get on board for me to get to a minimum viable product? And so obviously it was the engineer and the dentist. And so as soon as I got these validating results, I went and I started building my little team. And then from there, it was like we went straight into the design process and being able to utilize electric toothbrushes as the baseline and then combining it with a floss pick head. And so that was really the beginning of it. And then from there, I started to go out to raise a little bit of money here and there because consumer electronic hardware is extremely capital intensive. I had no idea, very capital intensive. And that's when I had certain investors say, okay, these survey results are great. I want to see that someone's willing to sign up for your email list. So I'm like, all right, literally bought Marketing for Dummies, like Facebook Advertising for Dummies, the book, launched my own marketing campaign on Meta and did an email landing page and then collected all these leads and for super, super highly efficient results. And so it was just all these like little experiments I was doing to just validate the idea and get more and more people on board so that I could eventually make it to the Indiegogo stage and then the production and manufacturing stage.
Yeah, that's super impressive. The 0 to 1 pre-validation, I think people don't talk about enough. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I just have two quick questions, and I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll have some follow-ups. One, who was receiving those surveys on SurveyMonkey? Was that like a panel that they have, or is that an email list you had? And then the second one is, what was your actual offer on Meta ads to convert them into an email subscriber on your lander?
Yeah, great question. So with SurveyMonkey, they have their own survey audiences. So I didn't have to pay. It was just whoever's in their network of, I mean, it was like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. And what's amazing about SurveyMonkey is that you can actually modify that audience to fit your demographic. So, say you're wanting to do a healthcare startup, you're not going to want to send out like a general population blast. It's going to want to be limited to healthcare providers. But for mine, because everyone has a mouth and everyone should be flossing, I could keep it much more broad. So I had all ages, both genders, economic variety. I really like, so my undergrad, I was a psychology major and I spent a lot of time I had my own like honors thesis, everything like that. So I understood that I needed to have statistical significance. And it was really important to me that I was getting enough of a swath of an audience to know, like, okay, and then being able to splice up the data. That's what I loved. I loved going in there and being like, okay, looking at our 65 and plus, how are they rating these pain points? Looking at our millennials, how are they rating these pain points? And it was actually through splicing up that data on SurveyMonkey, and they have this all available. It's very easy to do. It was through that data that my first hypothesis was turned on its head. I thought that I was creating Flaus for other non-flossers like myself. But what I found was that my most avid customer, the one that was the most excited for a product like this, was the person that was already flossing every single day. They just wanted a better, quicker, easier way to do it. And I then thought, great. That is the lowest hanging fruit. I don't have to invest in education for behavior change to get them to even start doing this. I can leave that to the behemoths of Colgate and Oral-B who are plowing millions and millions of dollars every year trying to get people to change their behaviors. But just through splicing up that data, I was able to see all these core customer segments. And that's when our Bang and Boomer audience, 60 and up, that's when they first jumped out to me, that I was like, we have an older audience, and I didn't understand why. And we can get into this, but it was through Indiegogo that I realized Flaus is an incredible accessibility device. So again, just the data coming in from the customers and pivoting towards that. And then for the email list, there was no offer. I would just put it up. It was like, if you think that, this is interesting. I copied the Harry's landing page. Everything I do is based on other people. You never need to reinvent the wheel. I went, I looked to see what they did, found a 3D graphic designer because I did not have a product. And we created a beautiful page. I set it up all myself, I think on like Squarespace. And then, yeah, no offer. Just sign up if you want to learn about it. And I was able to get like, I think it was like it was like 8 or 9,000 emails from it. It was wild.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of parallels. I actually think the common thread that I've seen with people in e-commerce space is, so I was a psychology major as well.
Yes,
You
love
know,
it.
love that. It's really human behavior for one, and I think there's people that just come from like a data-driven mindset, whether it's from being a lawyer or in finance or this or that. I feel like those two parallels are actually the reason why people are in this space. It's because it's frequent experimentation, it's just curiosity, it's people, it's products
Yes.
and development. So that's a
Yes.
big thing. I think a question for you, as you went through this whole development part, I feel like there's a lot of qualitative pieces that like you definitely hit on and they're really important. You talk about some of the quantitative pieces as well, whether it's the amount of survey results you're getting. How do you initially come up with benchmarks of success that you knew that you were hitting certain milestones? You're like, okay, I need to lean into this area or I need to lean into this area. Like, what did that look like for you?
Definitely. Great question. So a lot of it was just, again, Google searching, just like looking up, like, what were those benchmarks? Where could I feel comfortable? What sort of questions did I want to ask? How many responses did I want to get? And a lot of it was just like online, my own research. But in terms of jumping from the Survey Monkey to then running this email wait list to then Indiegogo, that was all feedback I was getting from the investor market. So it's really important when you're going out to raise money, you're just kind of listening. The market always speaks to you. So you can always hear the feedback. And so at one point, me just having a little 3D picture on a piece of paper with my background was enough for me to raise money. Then it was, we want to see survey results. Okay, I'm going to go do that. Oh, we want to see an email wait list. Okay, I'm going to go do that now. Then it was, we want to see that people are willing to put down their credit card. And I'm like, I don't have a product for that. Then it was Indiegogo crowdfunding. So like my investors were always giving me feedback, and that helped me again as a first time founder be able to be like, okay, here's my next step on this path and this is what I need to do next. So I was always just listening to the feedback.
Now, maybe a harder question, which
Yeah,
is we've been through some pretty interesting times, I think, with investors. I came from the investment world. I love that approach, using investors as a backbone.
always.
But when investors might get a little bit nervous when there's like hard times happening right now, at what point do you listen to the investors and do you listen to yourself? Like, how do you, and also now that you're so deep into the business, you're the operator, you know everything about the business. How do you keep that level of transparency up, but also trust your own, intuition or data or anything else you're following?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So, you know, when I first started off as with Flaus, I definitely did not have the level of confidence that I have now. So I definitely was leaning a lot more on my mentors and advisors, like Doug Bouton of Halo Top Ice Cream, one of my OG advisors, Dr. Jason of Theragun, one of my beginning advisors. Like I leaned a lot on to them for help, and I still do, especially now when I have like big things, big problems that are like, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so torn. I go to them. But over time, I've really built up my own confidence and self-esteem of knowing that my instincts have gotten me here and my gut has gotten me here, and knowing that I'm so data driven that I'm like, the numbers just haven't led me astray yet. So I get a lot of like confidence in my decision making based on the numbers. Like we made a big pivot from Flaus 1 to Flaus 2. We changed the motor type. I personally had a preference for the Flaus 1 motor. We then utilized a customer researcher who his name's Nick. He is Chef's kiss, amazing. We've now done 4 or 5 focus groups with him, found him on Upwork. He's amazing. Um, and the data showed us people overwhelmingly preferred the Flaus 2 motor. So I had to put aside my own personal preference and what my gut was telling me to lean into the data. And it was absolutely right. And so it's always a really fine balance. And I have found that there's no lack of advice. Like everyone has an opinion, everyone wants to give you advice. It's about finding the kernels of truth in it and then identifying the people who are giving you advice who end up being right and then going back to them. That's what I do. I identify my like advisors who have been right numerous times, and those are my trusted people I keep going back to. But I even have Yeti Capital, like the founders of Yeti are my anchor investor. And they're obviously like brilliant, incredible. I mean, Yeti is just a legendary brand, but we'll have different opinions on certain things. Like, for example, pricing. They thought that we should be lowering our pricing. And I was like, I think we could go up. I think we have room to go up. And then they just trusted me. They're like, all right, like if you think that and you're looking at the data, let's try it. We went up and we didn't see a drop off in conversion rate. And so now we have even more of a contribution margin to play with. And so it's just in those moments of being able to be like, okay, learning like at the end of the day, like you want your startup to succeed and fail on your decisions and not anyone else's. And then surrounding yourself with advisors and mentors that you really, really, really trust.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you opened up Pandora's box. I want to hear about
Oh my God.
this price testing. I want to hear about like what do you do on that experiment? Can you like even walk through how you
Yeah.
went about it and then how you ended up to the conviction point where you're like, okay, this is right. This is what we should go forward with.
Well, so it's really hard with price testing. And it's hard because when you go out and you ask a customer how much they want to buy something for, of course they're going to anchor low. Like I'm just like, of course they're going to anchor low. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, I'd shell out $200 for this thing. Like they're going to be like $39, like, and so there is like a little bit where you have to look at some of this data and like with our backgrounds, Will, in psychology and think, what are they thinking? What's their psychobehavioral objectives and desires while they're filling things out? And so we did it. Indiegogo was an amazing place for us to price test. So we saw a lot of price elasticity on Indiegogo, where when we first launched the campaign, it was at $69. And by the time the campaign was done, it was all the way up at $99. And we didn't see a drop off in conversion. So I knew that there was price elasticity there. And so for us, we luckily have a very like, authentic subscription model because we have a daily consumable. And so I knew that I wanted the baseline price of our like kit to be 99, but then it was like, okay, could we have that be the subscribe and save is at 99 and then our one-time purchase is at 119. And so in beta we had it at 109 and 99, and then for when we launched like into hard market in September, I then brought it up to 119, and it totally stayed. We saw no drop off. And I was looking at a lot of the other companies about that percentage discount between the one time and the subscribe and save. And it was usually around 15 to 20%. So that's how I knew, okay, it needs to be big enough because we want to get as many people into the subscription as much as possible. So you don't want it to be only like a 10% difference. You want it to be material enough. And so that's what helped me get up to the 119.
That's really, yeah. I had the same experience, by the way, when running Recess's e-commerce business. It was a launch subscription, for them, and a lot of it was psychology of we did like price per
Yes.
unit testing, which is the price per unit was X percent different, where it was $3.99 versus $5, per can,
Right.
which was the psychology. Even though the prices were the same, actually, the gross price was the same, but like the unit price was so much lower that subscription became over 50% of the business and became a higher percentage of first time like buyers because that's also, we validated with the post purchase survey testing as well, saying like, why did
Exactly.
you buy? They said, oh, it's the price per unit. Like there was a price for this. It was the big discount that got me over, even though they were paying more for it initially and they were staying longer. Also, with the consumable, maybe you found this. The more they bought, the actual more they more they bought initially, the more they ended up buying. Because I think it became a
Okay.
habit, became more frequency for them, and so they kept on
Exactly.
purchasing over time.
Exactly. And so something that we discovered during our beta phase was the initial Flaus kit came with the Flaus electric flosser and then 90 of the floss heads. These are like the little heads, came with 90 of them. And what we actually found was that was too long of a period to get people back into the subscription. So when we hard launched in September, we actually cut the initial kit to 45 floss heads. So we cut it in half, kept the price the same, actually increased it, kept the price the same. But then that way we would have less time to bring them into the subscription consumer funnel. And so, again, that's just like all data and learning. And you just don't know until you like put it out there and start watching the cohort behavior.
I think you've been making my chocolate bars smaller. Like my Who chocolate, like I feel like the pack's been getting smaller, like, but it's the same price and I'm buying more of them.
There's
So
there's like a lot of, I think like especially on the food and bev side, I think that there's been like a lot, I've seen a lot of people write about that where it's like you're selling the bags at the same like size, but there's less actual like product inside of it. And um yeah, which I don't agree with. Obviously, like you want to be as transparent with your customers as possible, but what we also found was that right now about 65% of our customers, 60 to 65% of our customers are subscribers. And so about 40 to 35 are one-time purchasers. And from no commerce, we will ask them like, we'll find out like why didn't they subscribe. And the reason is when you have a product that's as innovative and new as Flaus, they want to be able to try the product first and then join the subscription because they don't even know if they're going to like it. And then also too, there's people that are flossing every day. There's people who are flossing multiple times a day. And then there's people who are going from never flossers to multiple times a week flossers. And so the quantity for them, they want to feel in control that like when they're running out, they can go online and order themselves. And so that was a very important strategic decision we made as millennials of being like, no one wants to feel forced into a subscription. And so we wanted to give people that optionality, but it's great that we drive so many people into the subscription already.
Yeah. Curious, what else have you learned from your post-purchase survey?
Oh my gosh. So, Bar already knows this. I am like the biggest no commerce stan, for sure. Like this is not sponsored at all. This is like just real life. I feel like I've used so many of these like tech stacks and different things. I'm constantly just like, either I'm just disappointed or I feel like the value doesn't match like how much I'm paying for something. Whereas with no commerce, I feel like it's almost like unfair how much value I'm getting from you guys. And I was on the free plan getting all this
for
too. And
price
I was like,
testing.
yeah. And so, and price testing. And then the biggest, I would say for us, so, I already talked about behavior. That's a big one. So in our no commerce post purchase survey, we ask people how often are they currently flossing because that gives us a really good benchmark to understanding like the types of communications they need and the cadence of reaching out. If these people are never flossers, they're not becoming every single day flossers right away. So their 45 heads are going to last a lot longer than 45 days. So like that's really important to us. And then one question we added back in February that has been like a game changer for us that I'm obsessed with is what's one thing that almost stopped you from purchasing today? That question. And I don't have like pre-laid out answers. It's just free type form. Incredible. So helpful. I mean, just so insightful. And I then actually, if it's really interesting to me, so we'll have some customers say like, I thought that the website looked scammy, like it looked like a scam to me. I then will email customers based on their responses and get follow-up information from them, because it's just so helpful to understand, especially as like not even just the founder, but just the founding team. We are so in the weeds that you can't see these things that these consumers are seeing. And so we also had some other consumers repeatedly say the lack of reviews. And I was like, we have like almost 500 reviews. I was like, wait, what? How is that possible? And then what with no commerce, which is so amazing, is that I could actually see what product they ordered. And I was able to see, oh, the people that are leaving the lack of review comments are our bundle customers who are buying multiple products. That then alerted me to go onto the website, and I saw, oh my God, our review link is broken. They're not populating. I would have had no idea that that was going on, but for those results from no commerce. And then also no commerce, the amount of times, because we were debating about Amazon, going on Amazon, but I'm very like, I'm not someone that's going to do like a spray and pray method. It's very methodical. Like we have nailed D2C. Now we're layering on Amazon, then it will be wholesale. But the amount of customers that said, because you're not on Amazon, I was like, it was just so validating that, okay, Amazon is the next distribution channel for us.
And how do you currently measure Amazon, by the way, like in the results that you see? Like, do you think about the spillover, let's say, of your spend on Amazon? Like, how do you think about that
Yeah. So
relationship?
we haven't even launched on Amazon yet. So we're actually in the process of launching right now. So
Make
it's
sure to get those
interesting.
reviews.
Oh yeah, so we're going to be doing all the reviews like through Vine and everything like that. I'm really excited. We're working with an amazing agency. They do Canopy and Nori, which are two very close founder friends of mine. And Doris Dev is Canopy, and they're our engineers. So very very
Yeah,
like
we
in
have
lockstep.
Michael DeSantis was
Oh,
one of the guests on
love
podcasts as
Mike.
well.
Mike is my he's my project manager on
All right, shout
Flaus.
out to Mike.
Oh, shout out to Mike. We love Mike. Anyways, and so what's fascinating is Flaus is already getting 2,000 branded searches a month on Amazon. People are already looking for us. So they were like, you are leaving at least $80,000 without any marketing on Amazon by not being on there. And so we're expecting for there to be about a 10% cannibalization rate from our direct consumer site, but we're planning on offering like different like bundles and pricing. So we're trying to make them so they're not directly competitive. And also, too, we're leaving the subscription piece on our website. So it's like if you get the product, you love the product, you have to use our heads, you have to come back to our website and then come into our customer funnel and join us. And so we can collect that data. But this is definitely going to be, I am nervous, but I feel like I'm working with like the best of the best. And I think that this is going to be a massive unlock for us.
Yeah, I think super smart to keep it that way. I know that the hashed email and not having a relationship with your Amazon customer is such a pain right now. So
Such a
this
pain,
is
and it's
yeah
crazy. I'm like, and especially for a product like Flaus, like it's an innovative product, it's an innovative technology, so there is a little bit of a learning curve, and our email flows are so critically important to helping consumers understand like how to pop on and off the head, that there's a travel mode because they'll accidentally power it off and think the battery died, and it's like, these things. So we're working right now with our Amazon agency to be like, okay, how can we load up our Amazon page to have all of this information there, and then try to do what we can to like try to communicate with them so that they're not coming back and getting frustrated.
I think the reality is, and this is what I've seen most with customers that make that jump, and I started Amazon for Recess as well, so I kind of saw this as well, is that that branded search demand you're seeing is because people are already hearing about you from some other mean, and usually it's going to be a spillover from, let's say, your meta ads
Right.
or some educational ad or an influencer, maybe if you're working with influencers,
We
or maybe
are.
they
Yeah.
even hit your D2C site, right? And so a lot of times it's about the convenience, it's about the path of where do they want to buy versus the fact that they're still learning about you for the first time. When you get more into like the non-branded world, that's when it's going to be a little more interesting, and they might do more of the searches on Google, and you have to have good SEO and then figure out how to get the right, editorial sites to write about you. So it never really ends. But I think the good part about this is that you might see just incremental come in
Exactly.
from just your general marketing efforts today. And that's what I've seen with most customers, especially as you get more to the awareness-based marketing, which as you get to like larger scale, you tap out
Right.
your audiences, you're doing brand kind of related reach frequency campaigns, or even if you're doing connected TV in the future, that's when actually that has the most impact on channels like Amazon because it's it's like the Google search bar, for most people.
Exactly. I mean, and it goes back to my founder story. Like when I came up with this idea, the first place I went to was Google and Amazon. I was like, okay, I'm going to go buy this. And I was like, wait, this doesn't exist. I was like, no way. And so also, their personal care, specifically oral care, is one of their most popular categories on Amazon. So it's just a very like native place for a product like Flaus to be. But that being said, like it's obviously super important that you have a product that's incredible because the reviews are everything there. For us, it was really important that we had our logistics, everything like worked out before we went to Amazon. And what's interesting about Google is, we do well on Meta. We're first order profitable on all of our marketing efforts, which is amazing. Not as efficient as I wanted to be. I definitely have really really high standards, but we are first order profitable, and Google is amazing for us. We are, and that just goes to the hypothesis that we are a needs based product. We are a needs based product for someone who just got done with their dentist appointment and just got shamed by their dentist, being like, you got to get this figured out, which, we've all been there. And you go online and you look up things, or, you're dealing with bleeding gums or swollen gums or all of these other issues. And we have found that Google has been uh, an amazing awareness and then conversion avenue for us. It's highly profitable for us.
It's really interesting. Are you using like shopping and non-branded search? Like, what are you doing on Google?
And yeah, so we do non-branded, branded, shopping, PMax. We are even profitable on non-branded. We crush on non-branded
That's
keywords.
great.
We're really investing in SEO. We've had amazing PR articles. Like we were named a Times Best Inventions of the Year, Fast Company, World Changing Ideas, like, which is just so helpful. And one of the things too about Amazon, and shout out to Ryan at Jolie, because my one of my main investors was very hesitant on Amazon, being like, it's going to cannibalize everything, blah, blah, blah. And what Ryan had told me, he's like, the thing is that consumers trust Amazon. When you are a new brand and no one knows who you are, like there's still that level of distrust, even buying on your own website. So Amazon is like a branded name consumers feel comfortable about. They know there's a good, easy refund policy. And so that was a whole nother reason why just getting on there as a smaller nascent brand just made a lot of sense.
That does make a lot of sense. And one other question we typically like to ask, as we wrap up is like, what's your kind of North Star KPI that you like to follow and your team likes to follow?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So, two of them. One is contribution margin for sure. Contribution margin is huge. And I think it's really important for people to have a good handle on not only, obviously the product margin, the gross margin, and then the contribution margin. Because for us, like we have distribution models, like with dental professionals, where it allows us to have a bit more flexibility in our like affiliate rates and everything like that, because we're not having to pay Meta and Google to run these ads. So contribution margin's a big one. Obviously retention rate for us is another North Star metric of like making sure that like we're providing value and we're keeping customers. Retention is everything. Like that is like, I'm so bullish on retention. It's like you can leave acquisition to the experts. It's like if you can't retain these customers, like what are you doing? So retention, obviously. And then finally, I would say I just try to find ROI. I'm like at least a 3x. That's my baseline, 3x ROI for everything I do. PR, we do a lot of dental conferences. Everything has to have a 3x ROI on it. Ideally, we'd be up to 5, but that's my baseline. And even with working with influencers, I'm like, if the data just isn't there, I don't do it.
Is that defined? Is
One,
that ROI defined based on the contribution margin over the investment? Or like, how do you look at ROI?
Yeah. So it's basically like, let's say for a dental conference, like for us, like so it's like all the upfront costs that go into like renting the booth, buying the materials, then getting the product, and then how much in sales we get. And then with, let's say, dental conferences, it's a little bit of a longer play because we're getting these dental professionals in at like literally almost at cost, but then they're then referring the product out to patients. So it's like
Mhm.
making sure that like it's all the upfront investment cost. So I guess it would be somewhat like it's more like gross margin.
Yeah, it's like offline ROAS. You're gonna you're
Yeah,
gonna
exactly.
you're gonna you're
Yeah,
gonna you're gonna term that thing in the market offline ROAS. You heard it first.
exactly. And it's tough. And so we use a lot of QR codes. We try to like track it as much as we can. And a lot of these plays, like I always like to give the analogy. It's like you're planting your seeds, and you have to understand that like you're not going to get the immediate gratification. A lot of this is long-term plays, and especially for TikTok and brand awareness, like the ROI will not be there, but you will see the ROI show up in the bottom of the funnel. And so it's like understanding that it's a full market, it's full marketing funnel, and you can't just be looking at one little aspect of it. It has to be how the whole thing works together.
One last question for me, because I know we're bumping up against time. You mentioned retention's obviously a big factor for you
Huge.
guys. How much of it do you think is in your control versus out of your control, given the fact that people obviously fall off the wagon with flossing?
For sure, people definitely fall off with. So what's amazing is we do surveys. Again, data. I do surveys all the time to our customers, and it's amazing. So over close to 90% of our customers report flossing more regularly since using Flaus, so driving real behavior change. But people fall off. People aren't doing it every single day. I definitely think that there's an aspect of it that's totally out of your control. Like it is what it is. But there's a huge aspect of it that's in your control, such as like trying to make everything as personalized and customizable as possible and making it super easy for them to be able to manage their own subscriptions. Nothing is worse than it being like a very like difficult process. And I really use just benchmarks online. I look at benchmarks. I talk to some of my other founder friends who are in like the consumer electronic hardware with a subscription component, like Canopy, Jolie. I check in with them to kind of see like what are they seeing. And then so long as I'm within that like healthy range, I feel good about that. Cause yeah, you're right. Some of it's out of your control and you can't like, you're not going to win every single customer. And if you're like playing that game, I think you're wasting your time.
Totally. Yeah, I think I've even had to learn to not take it personally. Like
Yeah,
if
right.
someone, stops using no or like churns, it's like, you're just not going to win every single customer.
No,
You
and
can
it's
try
like,
it to do everything. But
and
yeah,
how can you make that experience of them leaving the best experience possible, right? So it's like
totally.
that, like and I invest so, and I learned this from Indiegogo. Indiegogo was amazing. It was hard, very, very hard. But customer service is everything. So like giving people that love your product and giving people who hate your product the best experience ever. It's so much easier to try to win them back. Like for us, like we have some customers that are like, I want a scrubbier floss. They don't like the floss we have. So it's like, okay, we want to make sure that we offboard them in the most respectful, amazing way. And then as soon as we have the scrubbier floss available, we have them tagged and we use no commerce to tag our customers all the time. So we can then try to hit them with email marketing to bring them back in. And the chances of getting them back into our customer journey is so much higher if they have a good experience leaving than it is if we're like, screw it, burn the bridge, you hate us, we hate you too. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I think we could probably do an entire other episode
Yeah.
on CX and how to use that as a sales
Huge.
channel. But
Huge.
yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Sam. One last thing we like to do is just how can our listeners connect with you? I'm sure they're going to want to hear more from you. Maybe any shout outs on LinkedIn or Twitter or anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely follow me on LinkedIn. I think that's my like most active social media channel. It's definitely my favorite. LinkedIn, just at Samantha Cox. And then our website is www.goflaus, so GOFLAUS.com. That's how you can find Flaus. And hopefully by the time this goes live, we even might be live on Amazon. So you might be able to find us there too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah, thanks for
Thanks,
having
Sam.
me, guys.